Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I've got yet another very special Beatley flavoured treat for you all. Back in February, I reviewed Hornby's Liverpool Connection train pack, which consisted of some of the oldest and cheapest models in Hornby's range, painted up with the Beatles for some reason, and I concluded that they were just awful cheap tat that nobody in their right mind would want to buy. But Simon Kohler, who came up with the idea for these packs and who used to be marketing manager at Hornby but no longer has a position with them, actually responded to my criticisms on his website Kohlercoms. He dismissed my video as clickbait and claimed that the take-up for Beatles packs was excellent on both sides of the Atlantic, also highlighting the importance of train sets in attracting new modelers. Not that the Beatles pack in question was a train set, of course, but he did say how he thinks the Beatles products draw people into the hobby. Weirdly, he also mentions how the Thomas & Friends range did the same thing, apparently forgetting that Thomas & Friends products make sense in a model railway context because, you know, they're trains, and yet the Beatles have nothing whatsoever to do with trains, so Beatles-themed model railway products are completely incongruous and make no sense whatsoever, and frankly mentioning Thomas & Friends in the same conversation is a little bit silly. But perhaps there is a hidden link between the Beatles and Thomas & Friends that we've all missed. Stay tuned if you'd like to know what that is. Simon thinks Hornby should be applauded for their efforts. Yeah, perhaps we should save the applause until Hornby have actually turned a profit. And get this, Simon thinks that so-called industry experts with their obvious shallow awareness of business should avoid passing comment. And finally, to leave the professionals to do what they do best. Well, the Beatles pack I reviewed was limited edition and only 1,000 of them were produced. Well, that's not many, so if the so-called professionals knew what they were doing and were calling these packs a success, they should have sold out by now, right? I shouldn't easily be able to find them in stock everywhere still, right? Nope, every single retailer I checked still has plenty of these in stock, even in spite of some heavy discounting. They're also still available to order directly from Hornby themselves. That means that they've sold much less than 1,000 of these. And that doesn't sound like much of a success to me, and it seems to back up what this so-called industry expert said in the first place. They're cheap crap, and most people saw them for what they were and decided not to buy them. I think the main hole in Simon's argument about these packs attracting newcomers to the hobby is that they consist of some of Hornby's oldest and worst products, and the fact that it now costs £129.99 at the full price makes them anything but appealing. These models just aren't good ambassadors for Hornby. They don't show newcomers what Hornby is capable of, they're just outdated and not very good. Why would you want these to be someone's first experience of Hornby trains? Who's going to want to come back for more after that? If you want an example of a model railway manufacturer properly attracting newcomers to the hobby using an intellectual property, you need to look to Rapido Trains UK with their Titfield Thunderbolt packs and also their newly announced Either the Engine packs. Notice that the difference here is that Rapido have actually invested money into developing new and highly detailed models for these sets. They're not just rebadging ancient models and expecting people to pay a fortune for them. That is the significant difference. And to be fair, Hornby did try to do the same thing with the Titfield Thunderbolt, but they announced it unlawfully without having the necessary rights. Rapido had the exclusive rights, so Hornby had to cancel their range. Oh yeah, sorry, no applause deserved there. Well, it's all irrelevant anyway, because they couldn't even sell 1,000 of these sets. So their impact on the hobby, whether positive or negative, is largely negligible anyway. But the story doesn't end there, because the Hornby Beatles products keep on coming. And that's where today's review comes in. Today, I am looking at this. Another ancient Hornby model incongruously rebadged in a Beatles livery. And I have to say, it does make me a little bit sad to see this model like this, because of course this model used to be Hornby's beloved Thomas, although he's almost entirely unrecognisable presented like this. So this is another ancient model. Like I say, it was first released in 1979, and that makes this 45 years old now. Back in 1979, this thing cost £10.75, which is about £51 in today's money. If you want to buy this though, is it £51? Is it heck? Yeah, the full RRP is £69.99. And even though this is old now, yet it was brand new back when it was a tenner, this is now 40% more than it cost when it was new. Absolutely amazing. So we're going to take a close look at this today. We're going to see if this is any less shoddy than this thing. To be fair, it should be quite easy to improve on this, shouldn't it? And we'll see if this is worth almost £70. Now, I didn't pay £70 for this. I bought this from a retailer because I'm not insane. So the current retailer price is around £62.99. Just over £60, lucky, lucky me. So with that, let's see what this is like. Nothing more to say. I'm sure you'll be relieved to hear that. So one thing that I suppose is quite cool about this is that it's got custom packaging. I was wondering if they'd just ship this in the standard Hornby Railroad packaging, but they haven't. They've done a custom job, which is cool. They've also made some changes to the graphics design too, which is good. Look, we've got white text on the black background now, as opposed to black text on the black background as with the Liverpool Connection train pack. So I suppose I am pleased that Hornby have been able to stop applauding themselves for long enough to actually action some feedback. That's pretty good to see. Anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So the product code I've got is R30336, the Beatles 060 locomotive, and that's all we know. So with that, and I realise this video has gone on for long enough already, and we've not even opened the damn thing yet, so let's get this out as soon as possible. Right, instructions. Just want to see really whether we've got any limited edition certificate with this, or perhaps they didn't make as many as 1,000 this time, but no, this is just your regular instruction manual, which I will skip over for the sake of all your sanities. Right, what do we get in the accessories bag? 2 figures. Perhaps these are the remaining Beatles, charred black by the burning embers of their tattered careers thanks to Hornby and their applaudable efforts. But yeah, we've got a pair of crew here that you can fit, as well as some vacuum pipes that you can put onto the buffer beams. But now the crowning glory, let's see what this is like. Let's reveal. Can't reveal it. Plastic wrap too tight. Man, it is tight in there. Okay, ready? Unwrapping. And here he is, the ex-Hornby Thomas. And wow, I actually do notice a massive difference here. Look at the print quality of the lads' faces. You can actually make out who they are now. I'll do a bit of a comparison later on then and show you the difference. So again, Hornby have listened to feedback. They fixed the graphics design on the box, and they've fixed the absolutely horrifying print quality on the side of the engine. So hey, I suppose they do listen to some things this so-called industry expert says, and I think, do you know what, the model is a little bit better for it. I'm still not convinced on the concept of the model, but I suppose that's something that I, Hornby, and Simon Kohler will have to agree to disagree on. But anyway, let's take a much closer look at this and see what's involved. Okay, eye protection on then, because here it is up close and personal for you. And as much as Simon's blog about the Beatles stuff didn't make a lot of sense to me, it did do one good thing, and that was to explain the intention behind these Beatles products. So now we know that these are not intended for the serious modeler, which I think was pretty obvious from the start, but rather that products like this would attract newcomers to the hobby by appealing to fans of the Beatles. So hopefully, I guess they would buy something like this, catch the bug for model railways, and then start buying some of Hornby's other products. So at least now we can kind of keep that in mind and discuss whether or not these are actually likely to do that. Well, looking at the previous pack from last time, which was what the blog was about, of the millions and millions of Beatles fans out there, much less than 1,000 of them actually purchased one of those sets. So I would suggest that that pack did not have the intended effect. Well, possibly this will be different, but I still think that it's way over-optimistic to slap something people like, i.e. the Beatles, onto something that people currently have no interest in, i.e. a model train, and expect that this will be the knight in shining armour that will change that and attract people in droves to the hobby. Speaking personally, I absolutely love the Beatles. I listen to them all the time, actually, but if I wasn't interested in model trains as well, I wouldn't dream of buying something like this. And my granddad, who is a massive fan of the Beatles, and obviously he was around during the 60s when the Beatles were big, I showed him these models and he just laughed. He laughed at them because they are so absurd. And that is someone who loves the Beatles but isn't currently interested in model trains. And so far, he's not asked for one of these for Christmas yet. But Grandad, if you're watching, you've still got time. Write that Christmas list. But yeah, I still think that having the Beatles on the side of a locomotive does not make it appealing to Beatles fans, although I'm sure I could be wrong, and no doubt there will be some Beatles fans out there that will be enticed into buying this if they're a big enough Beatles fan, but I'm not convinced that there's very many of those, particularly if the last Beatles pack is anything to go by. But anyway, let's take a look at this. So yeah, the poor old Thomas model reduced to this. I have to say though that the printing does look dramatically better. So I'll show you a close-up of this. Here's Paul, my favourite Beatle, I think. Most talented, definitely. Oh, is that controversial? Maybe. So now I'm going to substitute in the 040 from last time so that hopefully you can see the dramatic difference in the print quality. So yeah, this has been done totally differently, really. It looks as though the print resolution now is much, much higher. Although noticeably, look, it's exactly the same design. It's just been pasted onto a different Loco. So once again, maximum effort from Hornby here. But at least it's not been produced quite as nastily as the previous set. At least they've tried to make this a bit better. So yeah, we'll do a very lightweight applause there. Very nice. We've also got the red running plate, which looks okay, I think. And my favourite aspect of this is the brass coloured dome, which is quite unusual, actually. I like that. Detail-wise, it's the same E2 as before, and I reviewed one of these 2 years ago, so I'm not going to go into any detail on this. We've got metal-turned safety valves. I think that is basically the only detail of note. Separate buffers, not sprung, of course. Horribly dated Loco with the large D-shaped couplings, not NEM. So again, this is a 45-year-old model. It's not been appreciably changed in those 45 years. This is not representative of what Hornby is capable of these days, and that's why I don't think it's going to impress uninitiated Beatles fans who haven't experienced model railways yet. Not that I think they're going to be buying this anyway, but even if they did, yeah, I can't see this inspiring anybody to take up the hobby. Although, again, perhaps I could be wrong. I am somewhat of a model railway snob. But anyway, I have noticed that this is just a couple of grams heavier than the previous E2 that I looked at, so I am wondering if maybe something has changed inside. Have they upgraded this? Have we got a DCC socket in there now? I'm sure almost certainly not, but I do want to look and see if I can figure out where those extra couple of grams are coming from. Okay, quick peep underneath the body then. Let's see what we've got. No screws holding these together, of course. It's just a clip at the back, which is awkward. Oh dear. There we go. Right, let's have a look. Yeah, okay, so it's the same thing as before. How many poles on the motor? 1, 2, 3. So it's your same old 3-pole motor, same old mechanism. To be fair, these Locos do have proper bearings on their driving axles, so they should last a lifetime. More's the pity. Yeah, don't think these are for keeps, are they? I think I can feel an accident coming on after this review. But yeah, it's pretty much exactly the same as the last release, just with, I don't know, a bit more heat shrink tubing around the wires and stuff. But yeah, really no difference besides that. So no DCC socket. Can't chip this unless you're willing to solder a decoder in manually. Alright, so I'm going to make this fairly quick because I don't think there's going to be any surprises here. So with that, let's just give this a try. Let's see if it works. Here we go. Yep. And yeah, the mechanism's not that bad in this. I mean, it's got the bearings, it's got the motor, which is just a 3-pole motor, but the Type 7 motors are pretty good performers, as you can see. And this is working quite nicely. Let me run by at 50 for you. Here we go, half speed. All right, is there any torque there? It's just funny doing this, isn't it? Like, why? Who cares? But yes, there is. It's able to turn its wheels. And Type 7 motors, famously, they can usually crawl pretty well. This has not been run in yet, but let's see what it's like straight out of the box. Yeah, really good. So there you go. Performance is okay. Certainly a good performance. Just like the Beatles gave. Oh, it's cut out now. There we go. Right, so in terms of rolling stock, and no, I'm not going to run this in before coupling something up because I don't really care about it that much. I can't find the Beatles wagons that Hornby made. I had them out on my shelves for ages, and then I got tired of seeing utter tat every day, so I've hidden them away somewhere, but I can't remember where. I've just searched everywhere, can't find them. So, I mean, it's a good problem. I did a very good job of hiding them away, but I wish I could find them now. I can't. So I've set up some of these open wagons instead. So with that, let's get the Thomas to couple up to them. Just see what it's like with a load. There we go. And I've chosen wagons that have matching couplings so that this should sort of work okay with them. Okay, with that, off we go around the track. Only a light load, of course, so it should be okay. All right, here we go. Keep an eye on the performance around the curves. And yeah, it seems to be absolutely fine. So I think the model itself I don't have a massive problem with. It's not frightfully expensive or anything. It's clear Hornby have tried to make improvements, i.e. with the packaging and the print work and all that. So it's not the model itself that I have a huge problem with. It's just more the concept. I just don't like the idea of this. How do they justify its existence? And based on the comments I got from the last Beatles-themed video, I didn't see very many people disagreeing with that. So my final question for today then is, why don't Hornby try to appeal to the existing model railway audience instead of continuing to try and attract people from outside the hobby? Because don't forget, there are so many thousands of people who are already interested in model railways. I mean, take my channel for a start. Tens of thousands of people every single week tune in, and those are just the people that watch my videos and like what I do. There's obviously so many more besides that. So there is already a big audience for model railways. Why didn't Hornby produce this model in, let's say, an LBSC Umber livery? Because I guarantee that would have done better. And I suppose the broader question is, why are Hornby having to try and appeal to people outside the hobby instead of people who are already active within the hobby? And I think the answer is that a lot of people are just quite fed up of Hornby. There's a lot of issues with their products. They make a lot of silly decisions. Many times they've been involved in controversies and things. The prices, the quality, all of this stuff, new features not working quite right. Yeah, that's why. I mean, you don't see a Curoscale producing Elvis tat or anything like that, do you? And I think that's because a Curoscale are doing just fine by producing models that actual modelers want. I asked a Curoscale a little while ago, how are your prices so good? And they said it was because a lot of people buy our models. It's not unusual for them to produce 10,000 of a locomotive. So they don't need to go out and create Rolling Stones train set. They're doing just fine creating model railway stuff. So I can't help but feeling that Hornby would do better if they just focused on what Hornby does best and make models that their core audience actually want. Models that are high quality, that actually compete with their competitors. Using harebrained schemes like this to try and attract people from outside the hobby just seems a little bit bizarre. You know, focus on what you're already doing. Plug the leaks instead of trying to just add more water into the tank all the time. And I have absolutely nothing against a manufacturer trying to attract interest from outside the hobby. I do think that is something that we need to do. But it needs to be done sensibly, doesn't it? The Thomas & Friends range, that was a fantastic way to do this, because Thomas & Friends characters are trains that make sense. Harry Potter, that made perfect sense because there's a very iconic train in most of the films. I think that's a good idea too. The steampunk range, well, that was a good idea. I see where they were going with that, but the products were just so poor that it didn't catch on. Then you've got stuff like this. I just can't see this attracting people because the Beatles have got nothing to do with trains. And you know, if Hornby were thriving, doing really well, making money, then I wouldn't have a problem. I would say, yeah, I don't like these models, I'll leave them alone. Hornby are going to be fine. They're going to have the resources to produce the models that I do want. But Hornby are not fine, you know, they're losing millions every year. Things are really not looking good for them. Producing this kind of thing, I don't think is going to help them. And they've produced kind of rubbish like this for a long time now. It's not fixed their position. Now, it might not be the railway corner of Hornby that's losing all this money. Maybe the railway sector is doing really, really well and I don't know what I'm talking about. So it will be interesting to see how long this Beatles Loco stays around. Is it going to sell out immediately or is it going to end up in the bargain bins? We shall see. So yeah, I don't know. I don't like this, but then again, maybe I'm not the intended sort of target audience for this thing. I don't know. But comment down below, let me know what you think about this. Have I got this right? Have I got this wrong? I would really appreciate your opinion. But for now, I think we will leave this there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. All right, cheers folks, you take care.